What's up, legends, and welcome back to another designer interview. I'm here with my correspondent, Rosie, in the background taking a little power nap. And I just wanted to say thank you all for the patience. This video was supposed to come out back in however many months ago with the release of the Unmatched Slings and Arrows Shakespeare set, but literally there was a spiral of scheduling catastrophes that just never got this interview edited, and here it is. So yes, thank you so much to Jason for letting me pick his brain about all the design intricacies and questions I had about the Wayward Sisters and their deck, as well as just having a really awesome conversation with me. There are a lot of super interesting little discussions we had and nuggets of information that I highly recommend listening to the whole thing if you have any interest in Unmatched or game design at all. It is just absolutely hypnotizing listening to Jason talk about these kinds of things. So thank you very much for Jason again for giving me your time. Thank you all for the patience with this video coming out. Thank you to all the patrons who support me and help make videos like this possible. And thank you for watching. So now, enjoy the Wayward Sisters TDC Jason interview. Let's go. All right. Well, we are here with Jason, the designer of the Wayward Sisters deck in the new Unmatched Slings and Arrows set. Jason, how are you doing on this fine evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing, Taylor?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. I just ate a big bowl of pasta before this, so I'm all carbed up and ready to go. We're going to get through a nice 6-hour interview right now, so I needed a lot of energy. So, the first question, probably the most existential one of the night, is who are you, Wizardly Meyer?
My name is Jason Hager, and I'm a father of 3 that lives in Ohio, and I like to play games and design games. I come from a competitive TCG background, did design work on a TCG, and then with the contest for Restoration Games, the deck that we're going to talk about today kind of started me toward a board game design path. And I think that I'll have 4 or 5 published board games by the end of the year. So it's been exciting. It's been a fun road.
Yes, I can say with firsthand experience that I have played some of the games that are coming out this year for Jason, and they are awesome. I'm wearing the shirt of one of them, but it won't be called that anymore. But
thank you so much for wearing the shirt. That game's great.
And besides designing the Sisters deck that we're going to talk about, you can see it in his background. He was also one of the designers of Tales to Amaze.
Yeah, in fact, the sequence was flipped. So the Sisters was designed first, and then we loved me and Darren, who's my partner at Dirtle Games, who also designed Unmatched Adventures Tales to Amaze. We enjoyed getting the chance to do the contest so much that we're like, we should keep designing stuff. So that's why we worked on Adventures to begin with, was because of the Sisters and the contest that Restoration was running. And this was in the end of 2020. I think the Sisters were submitted to the contest September 2020.
It was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
So these interviews are always fun because I'm asking you questions, trying to see what your mindset was like 4 years ago. So
yes, and we will take a walk down memory lane as we talk about the Sisters deck, or even right now, to let you know what Unmatched was like in 2020. So when the Sisters were submitted to the contest, the Buffy set had not been announced yet. So we just learned as we submitted it what all of the Buffy cards were going to be. So everything was pre-Buffy, and it was certainly pre-Little Red. So especially as we talk about the mechanics and how they feel a little bit like Little Red, know that when it was revealed that Little Red was a fighter, I thought, there's no way the Sisters can win the contest anymore. It's too close. It's different and a lot of fun. We could definitely get into that.
Mm-hmm. So you said you played other TCGs. What specifically had you played before?
Oh, I mean, years and years of Magic, and then I played a lot of Versus System, which was an upper deck card game based on superheroes, and I played that one really at a high level. Got to travel around the world to play it, and then I later got to play the Elder Scrolls Legends, which was similar to Hearthstone, a digital TCG, and I did well in that. And then they hired me to work design for it, so I get to work on that, and that's my previous game design experience before switching over to board games.
That kind of sounds like a very similar story that happened with this one, being good at a game and then getting hired to work on it.
Well, this one flipped because I had not played Unmatched until the contest was announced, and then I was playing a weekly game with my friend Darren Ruckner, and where we were playing through the BGG Top 100, and I saw this listing, and I was like, "Hey, we've never heard of this game. Do you want to, design it? And we'll just play this for a few consecutive Wednesdays." So, and then once we designed it, we realized, well, I should probably be pretty good at this game if I'm going to like kind of understand the mechanics on it. So that's when I found the competitive scene, and that's when I got to meet everybody who's now been a part of my life for a few years now. So it actually flipped the other way, where I wanted to design it, and I figured I better understand this. Whereas my previous experience came from like the game first and playing it, and then falling into design.
It's actually awesome. I was going to ask you how you got into Unmatched, and it's actually very, very funny that you kind of just like stumbled into it, almost like wanting to design something for it, and now look
Yep.
where you are.
Especially when it became, it was, if I was going to have any design opinions, I wanted to make sure that those opinions were based on the reality. And the more I played it, the more I fell in love with it. So it was a really easy, an easy like connection to manufacture. After that, because like the more you play Unmatched, the more you find there's just like little subtleties and like beautiful moments all through it. So yeah, it was a labor of love. Yeah.
Mhm. Just to kind of give some of the viewers who may not be as familiar with you an idea of who you are as a person, who are some of your favorite Unmatched characters to play as?
Oh, certainly Sinbad. Sinbad the Sailor is terrific, and specifically Porter. And I like playing him in really strange ways because he breaks all the rules and some of the most fun ways, where all of a sudden movement doesn't matter in the same way, and like card draw doesn't matter in the same way. So my very favorite play with Sinbad is just turn one, riches, and discard some voyages, just so start playing the voyage game immediately. So I love that. I love Bigfoot. I love like the simple, powerful like card quantity characters quite a bit. I
Mm.
love knowing when to use Bigfoot's ability. He's one of those of like deceptively simple, but is actually like a pretty great finesse character. And to be honest, I like playing most of them. And one of your favorites, I'm a big fan of too. Is it Daredevil? I like playing Daredevil whenever I can. It's a fun balance.
Jason,
And
thank you so much for your time. This was an amazing interview.
all right.
We'll just cut it there. Yes, as much as I may not like the idea of Daredevil, I certainly appreciate the execution of it, especially in like design. Like it's very thematic, and I will admit it can be pretty fun to play as sometimes. So you win this round, Connor. So as you were kind of discovering this game with Darren, what were some of the things that you like picked up on that like kind of led into your first like ideas for designing? Like what were some of like the core parts of the game that you really wanted to highlight?
It's a game. I mean, it's a game where position matters. So I just finished doing a lot of design for a card game that didn't have this like positional map element. So getting to explore all of that was really exciting. It's also really exciting generally to know that the way Unmatched is structured is that if you back away from your opponent, you're going to get to draw your entire deck eventually. So like that your character will almost for sure do the thing that they're designed to do, and that's a really cool design task. Is to know that like if you want to on a match, you can draw a lot of cards because cards are tied to maneuvering, and therefore like fatigue matters a lot, which is the bad side of it. But the good side of it is that characters truly feel like themselves in that it's not just like a random assortment of cards in the same way that other TCGs can be, and that some games don't feel like the that you really got to play the character, whereas Unmatched you almost always get to play the character. So that is really interesting from a design standpoint, because each of those little touch points in a game of Unmatched, from those early turns to like kind of the meaty middle, and then when someone's close to death, and then like the pursuit of the character that's close to death, all of those take on kind of a different texture and a different flavor with each of the kits, and then each of the matchups you have to decide. In a lot of TCGs, there's this concept of like who's the beatdown, and you have to decide who's the aggressor and who's not. And Unmatched, like that little lever gets to switch in like really fun ways. So there's all of these like really cool little subtle levers you get to move in Unmatched. So as soon as those started like availing themselves to me, I was like, this game is deeper than I expected. There's one of the ways I sometimes describe it is, even in the early sets, there's these like tiny little interactions between the different characters that you would imagine that they must have been curated into the system, because they're so like elegant and subtle, but what the reality is it's the system allows for it. So like the idea of like drawing a card when you maneuver, and that's your primary draw mechanic, creates all of these like cool back and forth. So the system is beautiful, and as a result there's a lot of like downstream cool stuff. So that's what I like designing against, is like the way that plays different than the other TCGs. Specifically, the fact that they can even change the number of heroes, so like the number of your figures and your representation on the board. I played other like positional games, like I played a year or so of the Duelist card game, which was kind of like a TCG that also had like a map grid, and there was some amount of positional aspects. But this really blows that out of the water. Whereas not only are your characters, the number of units that you're going to have varied, but they're like curated and locked in, and then the map is going to be different every time. So like there's a number of like variables that you get to play with, and it just makes for a really cool design space.
That was probably the greatest technical answer I've ever heard to describe this game. I'm gonna give you a round of applause for that one. That was amazing.
I mean, really, the design of the core, and like specifically the first set of Unmatched, is just like one of the coolest designs I've ever seen. So,
so
I can go on and on about Battle of Legends Volume 1, but we'll move along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that set, I'm trying to like remember what it was like back when there were like 4 or 5 sets out and the game was still like fresh and new, because I feel like I look at the game now through this very like competitive level with like everything in full perspective, but just like going back 3-4 years ago, it was a different era, and sometimes like I miss like the feelings of that time, like when first playing characters and stuff like that, and not really like fully understanding. But
yeah, like the first time you get to see a character that has a bunch of 1 health sidekicks, and you're like,
yes,
this breaks the game. How is this even? Is this even fair in any way?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh no, you can work around it in this way or this other way, and there's all of the there's that bit of exploration. But to be honest, I feel like the core design group for Restoration is still pushing the limits. I feel like there's a bunch of sets where they could have like sat on their laurels and did not. Like they took risks and they continue to take risks. And I got to do the design here for the Wayward Sisters, but like their designs that they came up with, the other content in the box. I know that John was, I believe it's John, was the Shakespeare designer, but the other two came in house, and they're great. And all the other stuff I've seen recently, like they take risks. They're big swings in the system,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they get burned for it. Sometimes there's an Electra that gets through, but most of the time it's just been as Darren says, they hit a lot of dingers. So yeah.
Yes, I truly appreciate like how different all the characters feel. And yeah, like you said, eventually you get some characters that are too far in either direction, but I think for the most part a lot of their characters are in this awesome sweet spot right in the middle.
Yeah, if you want to make an omelet, you gotta break some eggs.
If you want to make some Skyline chili, you gotta I don't know what's in Skyline chili, so
cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Mustard and cinnamon. Anyway.
Okay. So, when you first were thinking about the design contest, like how did this deck like come to be? What were some of the first things in it?
I really like anything that gets to use cards or aspects of the game as a resource in a way that you didn't necessarily expect. Um, at this time, I like remember that Little Red hadn't been a thing. So the idea of using your discard pile and that's a source that you could use, I got really excited about like having this like interstitial zone and like I think I was playing enough online that I saw as you know the nature of like some of the competitive players are you put your discard pile out. You kind of like as you play, you spread all the cards that you played so that everybody knows, hey, I played these cards. So it's really one of those moments where you see those spread out and you're like, I could be using these. Like these could be a thing. So the first iterations of the sisters, not all of the cards had ingredients. It was like specific cards. I think there was 12 or 16 or so, and then those cards went into the cauldron. So some like interstitial zone that then could get spent against your spell book of the different spells. So it really came from that bit of like organizing your discard pile. It's like actually there's a mechanic in that. So let's explore.
Did you start with the idea of the sisters being the hero, or did you kind of like build the deck up and then kind of figure out what character would match that
You
spell
know,
book?
there was a little bit of as Darren and I were making submissions for the contest, we wanted to make sure our submissions were varied. So we had, a character with regular sidekicks, and a character with, I think we had some with one health sidekicks, and then the Raptors were a thing. So it became, oh, you can do that. You can have multiple heroes. That's something you could do. What if Raptors but different? What if Raptors but not surround and pound, but like kind of illusory and want to spread out and care about the map and not adjacency? What would a contemplative Raptors feel like? And that's one of the prompts that went into the sisters. So putting some very small health bodies on the board, and then seeing what are the ways that you could take advantage of that. Trying to be aware of the overall health pool. A lot of Unmatched, you get that like mid 20s or like low 20s for like your character and your sidekick, and then sometimes health is hidden within the cards. But here I started really really early. I'm like, what if we just have the 6 health characters and you just have the 18? So like how can you leverage that and make it feel like you have a little bit more? So some of the cards in the deck kind of leverage that, and it at the same time I was like submitting, and so let me take one more step back. Originally this was part of a pitch for all Tall Tales, American Tall Tales. So Pecos Bill, John Henry, and originally this was the Salem Witches. So before it had any attachment at all. And really I'm going to give credit to Darren for the names in our Excel sheet when we were coming through with what the different spells that had ingredients tied to it, what they could be, and he just wrote double toil and trouble, and he didn't even realize, he thought that I submitted them as the Salem Sisters, but like an hour before submission I just like changed all of them to Macbeth. I was like, I'm going to lean on this and not put all the eggs in this tall tale basket, and just hopefully this theme, it will at least show that like there are different like genres of themes in the submission that we're doing to the contest. And then, as you may know, I did not win the contest. I was a runner-up in the contest, and it was John's Shakespeare that was a winner. So I haven't talked specifically to the restoration crew, but I have a feeling that we were a hanger-on. We were like, oh, Shakespeare worked, and it's terrific. And there was a submission for the Macbeth. At the time, I had submitted the Weird Sisters, and the Wayward Sisters is certainly a better term of praise. And it became like there's also a deck that there was 2 Shakespeare decks, so we might as well bring this other one along, like hobbling. And so that's where we step in. Yeah.
Having played the deck, it's a lot of fun. I would like to hope that you were a solid runner-up candidate and not kind of like one of the fringe ones, but
Yeah,
it definitely worked out very nicely with the Shakespeare theme.
yeah. That was the way the email from Justin originally came, was that like you did not get selected as a winner, but your mechanic was rad. Like, and we would like to develop that in a future set. So, you were going to be declared as a runner-up at some future time, and then we'll find out where it ends up getting used. So that wasn't immediately revealed to me that it was going to be part of something else. But yeah, it was. I think that the strength of the mechanic, kind of agnostic from the theme, also it would work with other things. It like particularly sings in this case with the sisters. Um, but yeah, I'm still really happy with the way they play. And as I started to talk to a few people that have played with them, they're really enjoying them. So that's, that warms my heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the comparison to the Raptors makes sense since they also have 3 different heroes. But I do feel like they definitely play a lot different, and the idea of kind of casting spells, I think you absolutely nailed the mechanic here with the entire cauldron in the spell book. So
thank you.
my hat's
Yeah.
off to you.
And yeah, so hopefully I won't talk too much about how they were originally, but I will talk that Restoration made some really great choices in the changes. So the sisters now being melee and not ranged was a terrific choice. All of the cards becoming ingredients, so they all got to play into the cauldron, and also restricting the timing in which you could use the spell book instead of being more open ended like it originally was. Now to tying it to the to after you attack is all good moves. Because, like you say, it is different than the Raptors in that you have a lot of choices. Yeah. But when you give a player a lot of choices, you open up the possibility for analysis paralysis.
Yes.
And sisters originally, they were pretty dirtily. Yeah. So you would need a timer, I think, to prevent your opponent from taking too long with the sisters. So yeah, they made a bunch of really great changes, and where they've landed feels pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first time playing this character, I was constantly just like double checking the cauldron reference, seeing like what spells I could cast, and then the task of trying to like plan out your defense and then like your next attack on your next turn to see what spell you can cast. I think there is a little bit of AP that can come in there, but eventually you reach the flow state after you play a while.
Yep, and so that exists, and like it got reduced from like significantly different. Like like this is a good state. Because originally there were some design goals, so this design happened in a couple stages. So the sisters get designed and they get submitted. I learned that they're going to be they're going to get printed. This is great. So then we get to meet with the Restoration. They say, your character is going to get printed. Here are some notes. So if you would like to like do some of the development on it and make some of the changes, then you can. So some of the top level notes that I had going into that second revision for the second submission was like all of the spells got toned down to be like less, like a little bit less game breaking, because all of the cards were going to become ingredients.
Boy, you said you toned them down. I'm a little scared to see what you're going to pull out.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot more sisters coming back to life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then one of the other top notes was when you think about sequencing, you think about, should you care about spell sequencing or ingredient sequencing? So really try to lean on one of those mattering significantly more. So I feel like this one, like there's still always going to be a little bit of both, but you don't want them to be all over the place, because that's kind of what leads to like now we have too many decisions. So when you have to care about the monkeys and the bananas, it becomes really hard. So primarily, I think that you care more about the spell sequencing, but it feels like it at least tilted. So yeah, as a result, I feel like it landed in a really clean space. But it's also the type of fighter you would choose if you want a challenge. If you want a little bit of like dipping into your spell book, that's what these fighters provide.
And you said you toned down the spells. Do you have any recollection of what they used to be?
Yeah, let me bring it up. So it always was 3 spells and then a big spell.
Hmm.
The big spell, however, at one time was it took so many cards to accomplish this that it was very unlikely you could do it. But it was like do 3 damage to like all the other fighters, return a defeated witch, and set all of their health to 3. It was incredible. And then
Uh-huh.
Restoration came back with people are only going to do that thing. Like, why would you do any of the like the earlier just like trinkety versions? And like, yep, you're right. So instead, like this recipe of like these 3 trinkets that all go kind of against a different aspect of the game, and then like the big one being gaining actions to just put pressure, is just a great place to land. Yeah.
Hmm. I'll definitely put an overlay of the cauldron on the screen as we're talking about this because I didn't think to add it, and now I realize as we're talking about it, that's where all the spells are.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah. That cauldron, that thing. If you haven't seen that in person, audience, check it out. That thing is glorious.
yes,
It's so big and awesome.
that is, I believe, the like by far the largest cardboard component they've made for any set besides like a game board.
Yeah. I mean, generally, like, look at the art that's on the screen right now. This
Hmm.
stuff is unreal good. Like
Yeah,
this set.
you
I don't think. Yeah.
your character does have arguably some of the best art in the entire game. Like having these 3 cards.
That
There's a
that
term for
triptych.
it, right?
Yeah, it's a triptych.
Hmm.
That one, I'm gonna have that up on my wall soonish. Like, I'm so excited. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
gorgeous.
I
They made
know.
great decisions here.
Yeah, Zero, Darkblade, and I got to do the reveals for these 3 cards, and it was definitely fun standing in a line and doing the chant. Yeah.
So, fun fact. Um, Whenever I submitted these sisters, I can remember talking to Darren and saying, I think Taylor's going to have a new favorite sister. This was like 4 years ago. That's how long ago we knew your obsession with Dracula's sisters.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite sister of the 3?
Oh no, they're all special to me. They're all slightly better than is it left facing sister?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, just all slightly
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. So this is my favorite sister of the 3. The
That's
one
your
with
new one.
the eye. Yeah. She's facing left, so she's the best.
That's great.
um,
Yeah.
so what was it like working with Restoration to kind of like refine and tune up the initial submission you had?
Well, first, I want to just like take a brief pause and say that during the submission process, you could tell that some of the decks had advocates in their design crew. So I want to thank Noah Cohen, who I believe was the advocate for this deck and liking the base mechanic. So Noah, thank you so much. Working with them is, in all cases, been great. Everybody in their organization, top to bottom, has been awesome and just so nice and like willing to listen, willing to field questions, and with this development, like you didn't have to do any of the development on your character. They would take it in house, or you could continue to like they like kind of like gave us a look behind the door in terms of like their production and like to see how like their development happens. So we get to see like a lot of those internal discussions, which was great. And then when it came to actually developing it, the back and forth, they had very clear design goals. Like, this is the way that this character should get developed further. These are like the pain points. See if you can address these. Like, make sure that all 3 of the abilities feel like they're worth doing. All 3 of like the smaller spell abilities, like they should be useful trinket abilities. Um, and then I came up with 6 or 7 different packages of what they could be, and submitted what I thought was my favorite one, along with all the other ones, and like the decisions behind them. I'm like, you could you could do this way where you like augment all of your maneuvers, or you could do like there are all of these like, or you could, whenever you cast a spell, you could also discard a card. Therefore, they're all more powerful. Like, and I gave like a set of like how that could work. Um, So, but this is pretty close to the way they got submitted after that first round, where each of them kind of like focused on a different aspect of Unmatched, whether it was like movement or card draw or healing. So that back and forth was very focused, and you could tell that like it's kind of their deck development. It's kind of a well-oiled machine where they know what they want out of things, and then they iterate quick, and then they like try to find the fun and push that way. If like a new good idea like comes out, they will definitely change course, and they'll definitely change their mind when when you bring up like, no, I think that this is better because of X. They will listen and like take that into account, and I've seen that change. Some of the things with this deck had not changed, and that's some of the stuff I'm the most excited about too. Like Pricking Your Thumbs, that was submitted in September 2020. Like that's the same card, basically. So like that's exciting. Having Prophecy be part of the list, I get really excited about like alternative reuses of any card that was previously an Unmatched to become a common card. That makes me like too excited. Like I shouldn't be that excited for it, but I was. So as a result, there were early versions that had a little bit more of the blind boosting involved and like setting up the top of your deck. There's still a little bit of that here, and like certainly a lot of good uses for Prophecy, but that's one of like the things I leaned on with the initial inclusion. And I had a design problem with the initial one that I brought to them. That like when they said that it won, I was like, be careful because the sisters feel too fungible. It feels like when you're playing with one sister, it feels kind of the same like you're playing, like if you're playing with one sister with 6 life, it kind of felt like you were playing with 3 sisters with two health. Like those didn't feel different enough. Whereas the Raptors, like they inherently feel very different. Like their power scale, once one goes, like it dips super duper quick. And part of that was in the fact that I submitted them as a ranged character. So when they made the change to the way that Stars Align works, because I submitted it not as all of the sisters, but as one of the sisters. Remember, this was before Yanenga had a card that was similar, so that was a novel concept to me, at least at the time. So what they created here, that would also make them like interestingly map dependent, was a great solution, and it also really affect the power level of the sisters. And one of the reasons you want to take sisters off the board as quick as you can. And I'll speak real quickly to I talked about the concept of like 18 total health pool, and my concept there was actually I feel like 18 health plays like 22 health, because if you're potentially going to kill a sister, sometimes you have to overkill them. So like it can be hard to do exactly the correct number so that you actually just dealt 18 damage to win the game. So you end up having to like, for sure kill the sister by like, attacking for 4 over or something. So you end up wasting a lot of like total power that's in the deck when fighting those different characters. And that like bleed over of damage, I was like, I bet you can take advantage of that. Somebody's going to throw big attacks into these sisters, and they're going to get punished. And that's what the Pricking of Thumbs was. So like that's really the necessity for that, was like trying to identify what the ways that you fight against the sisters, and then look to like patch in like the answers to those plays like early on.
I love how like intricate you're like unpacking this.
Thanks.
You mentioned earlier kind of like designing like different types of heroes, like with sidekicks and multiple heroes, and I think that comment you just made like perfectly demonstrates like your understanding of the game and like how different characters like should feel, and like different things to add to their kit because of that. Yeah.
It's also the scary nature of like one health psychics. Like typically you're comparing like your total damage output versus someone's like their defense output to see how much damage is dealt. But when one health psychics exist and they like negate entire cards, so whatever the card value is, they just like they absorb it. That's why characters like Wukong and Electra are so risky.
And so you directly included Prophecy from King Arthur's deck. Were there other common cards that you thought about including or maybe did include in your initial design? Or was it always kind of more like unique to the sisters cards?
This list is so very close to what was submitted. so it was just kind of the one. Like Prophecy was always in there. There was always I think at one point there was 2 familiars, but I think I submitted with let me see, curious.
And then there's the all-seeing as well.
Yeah, I think I may have at one point had 3 familiars in there, but no, it was mostly just the 2. I'm trying to remember. But no, like the familiars, the scheme that cares about all of the spells, like the alternative play for all of the spells, that was always in there. There were some other mechanics that were in there originally that like played with the cauldron, like cards that would sit in your cauldron for a turn, or like while they were in your cauldron would do something. So like I explored a little bit of that too, but all of that was kind of a hat on a hat. So like the cauldron was already cool, and like the spells were already cool. You don't. I I have a hard time when it comes to submitting things for design contests and you know just generally like do you provide like the elegant like this is enough solution, or do you be like here is the kitchen sink, like 2 out of these 5 things please, and just shovel in all of the ideas knowing that they'll like take away the ones that you don't. So I tend to do the other, to be like, hey, here are 4 different roads that you could go down. So there's a little bit of that, but this one was pretty close. Like one of the important things was like zones. Sorry, not on the map, but zones of play. So like your discard pile and your hand and your deck are all like zones where cards can live. So we're adding a new one. We're adding a cauldron. So now there's an additional zone, and you're used to cards moving from hand to discard or discard to deck or whatever. So now you have a new zone. So like try to have several cards that play with the different vectors between the new zone. So like have things move from the discard to the cauldron, and from the cauldron to your hand, and from your deck to the cauldron. So if you see a lot of those cards that are referencing those, like they were almost all attempts of like, like if we're going to create this new zone, what can it do? What do those vectors look like, and what ramifications does it have downstream on the way the cards interact?
Yeah, and I mean, there's like at least 5 cards that kind of interact with the different zones that you mentioned, which that thought process really shows in this design.
One change they did make that was probably smart is that ward. I used to be you used to be able to throw them anywhere, just get away. It was less value, but it was super annoying. So like they rightly took that away.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's pretty close. I mean, like lots of things changed in their initial, because they also took like when they made them all ingredient based instead of just primarily like the double toil and trouble were the ones that had the ingredients, and then maybe a couple more also had ingredients tied to them. And then when they resubmitted, like, hey, this is where we've taken it so far. If you want to do any more development on, all of the items then had ingredients on it, and those became like more of like the primary combat cards, and they were already a little bit that, but those went through several different iterations. So like they had different text. So like a lot of this text has changed considerably, but like the general like concept and the vibe for all of it is pretty similar.
Do you think that the change from range to melee was a warranted one?
It was impossible to make them bad enough. Like range is so good,
mm-hmm.
And especially with like 3 ranged fighters that could just like kind of come at you from anywhere. And because of like the action gain possible, it was a little bit like the scariest version of Dagger, just everywhere. Yeah, so I mean, I said it before, but like the decisions that went into the final, I feel like they went down all the right roads.
So what do you think the sisters do best? Like, what would you say their selling point is as like a unique character?
I think that anytime you have a recipe like that, like the spellbook is, like you're showing it big on the screen right now. Everyone watching this video, you currently see it big on the screen. Yep, you got nice editing. Anytime you have like big options like that, you get to play your character kind of like a modal character. And like whenever you give somebody like 3 buttons or 4 buttons, like there's always going to be a situation where you just press the first button over and over. Like you're just like, what happens if I just do that button? And then happens if I just do this button? What happens in the games where I just do these two buttons? So like there's going to be a lot of flexibility and a lot of ability to like change the way you play based on a little bit of the situation, but like a lot the matchup and what your theory as to who is the beatdown player and who is going to win. Like, do you want to try to like nickel and dime and like heal your characters up and kind of like lock down, or do you want to pursue and gain a bunch of actions, or do you want to pin? Do you want to like create a pin situation where you're going to be drawing more cards than them? I think that the sisters are going to have that opportunity to really play differently based on the different situations.
And what would you say they kind of struggle with? Like what weaknesses did you kind of bake into the deck?
Cancels.
Yes,
so like
there's no fate.
there's no fate. So I mean, and they're also a little bit of glass jaw. So like their defenses are not stellar. So they'll take a hit, but you kind of have to earn it. Like you have to go in and pursue, and they're like sneaky defensive and sneaky resilient. But like occasionally they like their cards will mismatch, and you're just gonna get blown out. Rightly so. So like the stars are not always going to align, like in a few different ways. So I think that they're fragile in the right ways that make for engaging play.
And if this is kind of a mean question, but if there was like one thing you could change about the deck right now, what would it be?
I would have something wicked this way comes do all the spells.
So just do every spell.
I would say just like see your book, just do all those things. and then I don't know, you'd have to take power from the deck elsewhere to make up for that, and the card probably becomes too important. But I love the idea that you'd just be like, all right, spell book, let's do all of them. But I think that their solution makes a lot more sense than my greedy we use different cards that do everything. Like this was well before the three wishes like had these like uber important cards. I thought that like there's probably a situation where you don't want all three of the minor spell abilities to the point that like one of them ends up not mattering, so you're okay not choosing it anyway. So like choosing all of them would probably be fine. So I think that maybe that there's like some loop potential inside of Curious Familiar that's interesting. So I don't know how often that you've played that and like you've used Curious Familiar to return a Curious Familiar. So there's some stuff there. I'm not sure that I would necessarily change it because it like creates some like interesting strategies that you've seen in other characters before, where things can loop and you can salvage your loop and keep things going. I wouldn't necessarily change those things, but I could imagine them in various ways and still being an okay kit. But overall, all the final touches they did were spot on.
Are you like 100% sold on the sisters theme, or is there a part of you that kind of wishes that like the Salem witches got their time to shine?
This is so much better. They I mean, I can remember in high school reading Macbeth out loud in class and reading the parts of the sisters, and like I have no connection at all to the Salem witches other than we were working on some like tall tale characters. So like this is just a great solution, and the art is great, and it always should have been the Wayward Sisters.
So
and yeah.
I was just gonna say, you've never thought about throwing Darren into the river to see if he would float?
No, never. He's not made of wood.
I mean, we could burn him. We could find out.
Yeah, I mean, but ducks. He's kind of a duck.
So I guess kind of to rope Darren in a little bit, how did this design lead you guys to Tales to Amaze Unmatched Adventures?
So like this design like opened a lot of doors. So when I say that I'm like grateful for this deck and the opportunities it has given me, like it would be an understatement. Like it would be like me, like I'm a little wistful over it. Like the whole thing was like pretty rad. So like this gave us the confidence to say, if we were Restoration Games, how would we make a co-op mod? And then Darren, with his wonderful way of opening doors, got us a meeting to pitch our co-op mod that Restoration also liked. And then that getting printed gave us the confidence and like permission to, hey, if this comes out in 2 years, we should have some other games available that we could capitalize on that game coming out and say, look, we have this real game coming out. Would you like to see our other games? So then we made a bunch of other games, and then those games sold. So we're now seeing like a whole slew of games that got developed during 2021 come out, and publishers take it seriously. And like, I think we're working with like 6 different publishers in 5 or 6 in various like states of like completion of things. And none of that would have been possible, I think, without the sisters.
How have you developed as a game designer, like since this initial kind of game design that you did?
Not much. No. I think that this one, like I got fortunate on because like a lot of early game design stuff that I've looked at, because like not all of the games that we've made have sold, even though there's some that I'm proud of. But I look back at them and I'm like a little bit cringy, but like there's nothing here. Like this one was something I think to be proud of, even though like some of the decisions that went into it, I understand them more, and I can now like kind of elaborate, and like I couldn't have spoken to this and like what some of those decisions are as well as I could have then. So I feel like I can get to the place that these sisters are quicker than I would have. And like this came through the Restoration pipeline. And I think that some of the items that I can make now are closer to like the things further in that pipeline as opposed to the things that we inputted to them to their pipeline.
I guess mandatory question, but why is there no regroup in this deck, Jason?
There was. So it never got submitted, but I was looking at the very earliest Salem one list today, and it had 3 regroups, and I had totally forgotten about that. But those got jettisoned because they were not an entertaining enough common card. So whenever I do any of like a design on a pitch for any of the characters, I look through all characters that exist in the whole card file, and I make a list of like all of the cards that could potentially work thematically with this character. So that's why Prophecy exists. That's, you know, with other stuff, like there's always a big list, and if there's other ones that can exist, then that's like regroup goes pretty quick. Regroup has its place sometimes. I think some people argue for it more than others, but I think that also folks have seen enough of it. So unlike Feint, which is like mechanically necessary, regroup isn't like wholly mechanically necessary, even though it's, you know, it has its purpose.
I was gonna say the place for regroup is in my heart.
Sure.
Just like you gotta scooch over. Regroup needs some room. So I was gonna ask about if you have created any more custom characters, but I know you designed 2 of the characters for Adventures, right?
Yeah, Tesla and Annie Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Are there any more characters that you're cooking up, or
in fact, the designer diary that from the Unmatched Tales to Amaze mentioned like several Tall Tales characters that we had designed when we were talking about Annie and Nicola, and one of them said redacted, and that was a reference to the sisters. So if people have mentioned that there was one that was listed as redacted, it was the sisters. And since then, we've had an opportunity to design a few more. We don't know what their state is yet, but hopefully the future's bright. Yeah, I definitely have some stuff in the hopper. Like I definitely have things saved. So whether those things will actually ever manifest, we'll see.
Speaking of the future, do you want to just like quickly tell us about some of the Dirtle releases that are coming out soon?
Yes. So the ones that I can talk about the most are Logic and Lore. The Kickstarter met almost all of its goals, and that's a little 2-player deduction game. It's an ideal like cozy game. Best in my opinion. Like I really like it as like a couples game, but it's a little quick deduction. Move your face down cards around, almost like a competitive Hanabi. And I highly recommend that one. I get to do all the art for it, which is still an amazing thing for me because I had not had any published art before, so it was fun to get to play both the design side and the graphic design and the illustration side. So I'm really excited for that to reach backers and then wherever that ends up going. And then a Sherlock deduction game will be out with indie board and card. I don't know if that's officially been announced, so don't tell anybody. But like that game that I've like tweeted about before, that's going to be a real game. That's going to be hopefully in the next year or maybe way earlier will be available, and I get to do the illustration stuff for that too. And I'm so very excited. And there's another one that I can't talk about. That's a trick taker that is just gorgeous. I didn't do the art on it, but it looks so good, and it's going to be great. Like, there's several things on the Duro horizon that I'm really excited about, and we have a whole new crop of prototypes to pitch during the next convention season. So made a party game for the first time, and then have a little like semi cooperative game that we've been working on, and a third deduction game that we'll be pitching. So, and an even stranger trick taking game. So we're trying to just look at every genre and be like, how would we do that? And then like, let's see what our sensibilities, if we came to bear on, on deduction or on trick taking or on a war game, like a historical war game, all kinds of different genres, because there's so many cool things in gaming. So I feel like the world is opening up and taking a stab at all these things. Hopefully, I have no idea whether or not like these will move units, as they say, but I'm just so excited. I have a bucket list of like seeing my game for sale on a Barnes and Noble shelf. So and it used to be Borders, but then I think that went out of business. So now it's Barnes and Noble. But yeah, just generally excited. It feels like we've been running hot lately. We've had just exceptional luck, and like all the people in the industry that we've met have been really, really great to work with, and so far so good. And so yeah, follow Darren's Instagram, where he will tell you that he posts a lot more than I post on Twitter. He likes to talk about social media more than me. So the Turtle Games Instagram, as well as occasionally the Twitter, but really my TDC Jason on Twitter is where I will like randomly talk mostly about Star Wars Unlimited lately. But like those are the places where I'll discuss games. I'm happily discuss any of the different like adventures that I have had on game design. If anybody is like going down that road and want to know like, hey, what was it like the first time you talked to a publisher, or what was it like the first time you did a speed pitch event, or any of that stuff, feel free to reach out to me. I'm active on the Discord. The Restoration Discord and the UM League Discord are great sources, and like all of the tournaments are great to play in. Like, yeah, those are the places you'll find me.
Definitely will have a huge encyclopedia of Jason/Darren/Dirtle socials in the description of this video if you are interested in any of those things that Jason just mentioned, because I know one of my favorite things about following Darren on Instagram is seeing all of his letterboxed movie reviews.
He loves a bad horror movie. Yep. And I've had a chance to interact in real life with Taylor several times, so all your audience should know that you're a sweetheart, and I appreciate getting to meet you.
Yes, I'll edit in a picture of us like hugging or something on the screen.
All right.
That there's a picture of me like spooning you from literally like 3 weeks ago, so I'll add that in there.
All right, great.
But yeah, Jason is one of the greatest people I've ever met in the entire planet. I can say with firsthand experience, I have played specifically Logic and Lore. I absolutely love that. It's fantastic. Love that there's like multiple difficulty settings. Love that it's like such a good Logic game. There's so many little like interesting tidbits I like about that game, but I feel like that I should have like you and Darren on in the future, and we can go all into that. I've played the Sherlock game. That one is also amazing. I played this game, but it's not called that anymore.
Yeah, that was when it was a grandma baking game. It was so good. It was so cutthroat. So many grandmother, getting beaten. Yeah. In the Sherlock game, the pitch there is that it's a combination of like Clue and Go Fish and Spoons. That's my pitch. That like whenever I told that to publishers, they're like, "I'm listening." It's a deduction game where you can win at any moment by slapping the middle of the table. But anyway, yeah, thank you for having played that.
Yes, I remember like a year ago, it was like 2 a.m. and you, me, and Big Mike are in the kitchen, and you're like, "Here, guys, play this little game." And literally, you just got like, I think it was 7 playing cards. You give us each 3, put one in the middle, and you're like, ask each other yes or no questions. Try to figure out what that middle card is, and when you think you know it, slap it, and then guess and see if you win or lose. And it's come a long way since that little.
Yeah, it was absolutely just that tiny thing, and like that is a engaging game. Your listeners, everyone out there, play like tomorrow. Grab like 7 cards in sequence so that both players know what the cards are, and then do exactly what Taylor just said. Shuffle them up, put one in the middle, give each person 3 cards, and have people in turn ask yes or no questions about the contents of their hands. And then at any time, someone can risk it all to win by slapping the middle. Yeah, it is surprisingly engaging. And what a foot, or Sherlock, the game is a foot, is the proper name of the game. It is that with like a little bit more robust like map around London, but that core like 7 card sleuth game is still in there, and yeah, it makes for a really good time.
Mm-hmm. One of the games that I loved playing with my family growing up was Clue, and my mom was so good at that because she was logic. And just looking back at it, one of my least favorite parts about that game is like the roll to move die that you use to move in between the rooms. And I feel like Sherlock, the game is afoot, is like Clue, but like so much better.
Thank you. Yeah, I've heard other people kind of describe it as like it's just slightly a gamery version of Clue,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll wear that because I mean Clue is a great game,
yeah.
but also in my mind it fixes some of the things I like the least. And you may notice that it's a node board with a map with different spots that all have different connections going, and that may have been influenced by another game.
And of course, Jason is an artist. He literally does all the art for like all the prototypes he makes. The Dirtle logo on his shirt was made by him. I'm gonna have merch coming out hopefully soon that features some of Jason's art, which I'm really excited about. The world is not ready.
I keep forgetting that exists.
Yes. So Jason, I guess, is there anything you want to leave our viewers with? Any final thoughts you have?
Hydrate. I think that's probably pretty important. Well done, homie. All right. So yeah, and in addition to that, like the things that your listeners will already know is like the Discord, those communities are great. Playing Unmatched in person at conventions is a terrific time, and come and talk to folks that are there. Like the designers typically hang around those areas too, and like everybody's really friendly, and yeah, this has been a trip.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure many people already know this, but like I cannot overstate like how just fantastic of a person Jason is. I remember I first played him in round 3 of the 2021 Summer of Legends. That was like my first big tournament, and I remember getting to that round. I had just beat Mike in round 2, and I'm like, oh crap, like I'm about to play the person that got like 4th in the last tournament. Like this guy's insane. And
was that our Beowulf, Dracula, and Sinbad?
Yes.
Yeah. I practiced that Sinbad Dracula match like 5 times, and I lost it horribly every time. I have no idea how in the world this could go right. But yeah, you were very kind in your demolishing of me.
But yeah, we had an epic like probably like 4 or 5 hour match over 2 nights. This was pre-timer, of course, so this was so much fun. And then I remember I met you at a convention, I think, the Next Gen Con, and I remember being like, whoa, this guy's like I can tell this guy's like a gamer's gamer, because during the draft pods for Unmatched, you're like keeping your characters hidden, like you like weren't showing anyone, you didn't want to give anyone any information. You played like an epic like Willow Dracula game, and you didn't know Willow's decks, so you were like double checking and stuff.
Yeah.
And now,
yeah, and I've heard that my tone can come off sometimes a little exacting or abrasive online, and I'm more of a teddy bear, and that's the way that you should receive all of my exchanges.
Yeah. And so hopefully after hearing us talk for the last hour, people can kind of understand that you are an absolutely amazing and nice person, and you have created some of the best Unmatched in Unmatched. Adventures is probably a lot of people's favorite sets, and that is thanks to you and Darren. And
Yeah, but like this is such a team effort. So like
yeah,
I can't let it go past without like there is a team of folks,
yes,
and that like all of our worst instincts got checked and shaved away. That made us look better. All of Justin, Noah, Brian, and Rob, and everybody else on like the art and development side, and like they're all incredible designers, and like one of the things that always strikes me whenever I work with other designers is just how much better their instincts are than me, and it's impressive to watch. So like mine are slowly getting better, but like the folks at Restoration, they have a nose for it.
so yeah.
But yeah, thank you for the kind words.
No problem, my friend, anytime. So yes, I hope everyone has enjoyed this deeper look into the Wayward Sisters. And Jason, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Woo!
I have occasionally I'll just like lose track of thought entirely. So feel
Uh-huh.
free to edit. This is stuff that's being edited, right?
It could be.
Okay, all right.